Hello and welcome back to OT, the podcast. We're here to talk about time watches, the confluence between them, and how to drop big stacks of cash upon them. My name is Felix Schultz.
And I'm Andy Green, small-time boxer looking for a chance to fight heavyweight champion Apollo Creed.
What?
Getting ahead of myself. How you going, Felix?
Well, I was fine, but then I was a little bit confused. What's going on, Mes me?
Mate, as the title indicates, this is a big one. We are finishing strong for the year. December, we have not slowed down.
No, we're just pulling out. Actually, no, we're going full throttle. We're gunning it down the highway, 2-lane blacktop, Harley between our thighs, but not the usual Harley. We've got Charley Boorman's electric Harley.
Not only is electric Harley, Felix, which we just finished riding, he's joining us. So you're a massive Charley Boorman fan.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's one of those weird things. So Charley Boorman, he's been in a few films, but I think most people will know about him through a series of documentaries he's done with his mate Ewan McGregor, who you will know from Trainspotting and Star Wars.
And 100 other films.
No, that's it. Yeah. Trainspotting, Star Wars. That's his entire career. Is like, George Lucas said, "Man, that kid can play a junkie in Glasgow like nothing. Let's make him a Jedi." So he's done a series of documentaries since late 2004. Like they've done 3, and then there was a couple of side ones where they've ridden motorbikes because they're both bike nuts. First, I rode around the world from like London through to America. Then they rode down the world from top of Scotland down to bottom of South Africa. And now they're riding, or have ridden, up the world from the bottom of South America up to Los Angeles. And that most recent one is called Long Way Up. Let's not spoil it too much because we chat about it with Charley Boorman. But there's some documentaries that you watch and you're like, I don't care. Like I don't love motorbikes. I'm not a motorbike guy. But it's a really good combination of things, and I just really enjoy it. They're really great, even if you don't care about Mongolia or bloody bikes or Charlie or Ewan McGregor for that matter. It's just a really good combination.
Well, I'm looking forward to having that chat. Before we do, some things have happened. Some things have happened lately. Bremont, who kindly did the intro to Mr. Boorman, released a watch.
They did, yeah. We should also, of course, mention that Charley Boorman is one of the longest serving Bremont ambassadors.
He's an OG. So, talk to me about the we both went to the virtual launch of the new Bremont Stephen Hawking limited edition.
Yeah,
talk me through the details.
Well, it's a watch, Andy Green. It's a Bremont watch.
Yes.
And it's the first.
They make watches,
yeah. They do a few things. It's the first Bremont watch that has a big date. And it's got a retrograde seconds hand on the front, which is interesting. There's actually
what's a retrograde seconds hand?
Well, it's a second. It's a it's a retrograde seconds display. You know what I'm talking about. It's Sunday afternoon.
So that goes from 0 to 30 and then flicks back and then goes again, right?
I think I could be getting that. I could be getting that wrong. But the display is different. Like it's not a hand.
It doesn't do the full 60. It only goes to 30.
Yeah, cool. There's actually 4 watches, Andy Green. There's 3 41 mils in white, rose, and steel. And then there's a 34 mil steel one, which is aimed at ladies, which has a meteorite dial. But the cool thing for me is the case backs on the 41 mils. Cool. That's where the tribute to Stephen Hawking really, really kicks into high gear, because they've sort of done a really nice. It looks really, really good. Like some of the Bremont, they're sort of special editions where they incorporate historically significant things. I'm like, hey, it's a nice watch. It's not for me. This one though, I think is really, really cool because they've got little slivers of wood from Stephen Hawking's desk that he inherited from his family. And they've put them into sort of little wood inlaid discs. There's a bit of meteorite in there. And they've sort of laid all that out into a really stylized representation of the night sky from 1942 when Stephen Hawking was born. And it looks really cool. There's the meteorite is sort of like a little black hole almost, and it sort of says A Short History of Time, which is his famous 1988 book. And then
A Brief History of Time.
Brief History of Time, short, brief.
Yeah, I mean, was it the only best-selling science book or something like that?
Yeah, it was in like the UK's best-selling list for something like 200 weeks or something stupid.
Long time. Yeah.
Not as long as it took to create the universe, so it must be said. So,
but also, isn't it? So they're limited edition, but isn't the font from they copied the font that he used on one of his briefings or something, and then used that font for like the numbering of each sort of serial number.
More than that, Andy, they used actual bits of the manuscript from like one of his seminal theses, like the paper. They got some of the paper and they cut that out and laser etch the serial number, like, number 8 of 188. And they sort of inlay that on the actual paper. So it's like a little bit of an actual Stephen Hawking document on the back of your watch, which, like, I think there's a fine line with that sort of stuff. Like, it can go a bit too far, but I think altogether it's quite an attractive case back. So if you thought that Stephen Hawking was the bee's knees, I reckon you'd be into this.
Well, the reception's been really good, which is sort of nice to see, obviously. But yeah, so there's a few those different variations are all limited, but the steel version comes in 300. There's 388 pieces, 88 in rose gold, 88 in pink gold, and then the ladies' Bremont is also limited to 88 pieces, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reception sort of, I mean, looking at sort of the feedback online and on social media was quite strong. Like, people really kind of liked it, and this is sort of a genuinely surprising, I guess, limited edition and partnerships in a sense. And there's obviously portions of the sales go to charity.
Supporting
sort of
motor
deal,
neuron disease, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's sort of how they ended up with the draw from the desk.
And I think that's what they do. I mean, all of these ones, there's a charitable element in there, and I like it that it's usually sort of a great British figure or object that they try, and not always. Like, they did stuff with the Wright Fly, but the Victory, which was Lord Nelson's flagship, they got bits of that. Like, that's sort of classic, really important objects of British history. And I think Bletchley Park was the other one. I think this is a nice addition to that. And I also really like that it's not another warplane. Like, this is something a bit different, and it's that speaks to maybe Bremont sort of evolving as a brand in a little way, offering something a little bit out of that straight, super macho sort of pilot's watch stuff.
The other cool thing?
What?
So they launched it obviously via, a live stream.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know who joined the live stream?
Who did?
Tim Hawking, his son.
Oh, really?
Which is pretty cool. Yeah, cool. He was on there, didn't you see? In the chat. He was getting around the chat.
Oh, I saw bloody Dr. Richard Harris, who was one of our early, interviewees.
Yeah.
Really, Tim? They should have got him on. They should have got him to answer some questions. Yeah. Well,
let's take a break, Felix.
Yeah, I think we've got to, have a little pause for a sec.
This week's episode is brought to you by Gucci, and today we're talking about all things Gucci grip.
Exactly. We've been spending a little bit of time with a few key grip models, and before we get down to the details, I thought we could use a bit of backstory. The grip was launched in 2019. It was designed by Gucci's creative director, Alessandro Michel, very much in keeping with his 70s-inspired vision for the brand. The watch is inspired by the early days of skating. The name grip comes from grip tape used to keep skaters on their boards.
Skaters gonna skate.
Exactly. The Gucci grip has grown quickly into a fully fledged family with colours, complications, and even collaborations with none other than Mickey Mouse.
Mr. Mouse himself. The other really interesting thing about the grip is that it was conceived as a gender-neutral watch. It's sort of a cushion-shaped watch design with a very non-conventional dial display. The first one had a little date at 6 and 2 gauge-like displays showing the hours and the minutes. And while there are quite a few options now, they all still have that grip look. It's a really cohesive collection.
Quick question, Andy. Do you think the grip is retro or futuristic?
An even quicker answer? Both.
No, that's a good answer. Andy, you've been rocking the yellow gold 38mm roulette. What is it, and what's it like on the wrist?
Cool. Well, like all grips, they're genderless watches, thanks to both the size and the design. On this wrist, mine, feels good, and the bracelet drapes nicely. At first glance, it looks, really retro because it's got the obvious, vibes from the 70s as intended by, Gucci's creative director. But at the same time, it blends that mechanical digital display powered by the quartz movement, and it feels, futuristic. If I had to describe it, sort of like watching Back to the Future and seeing how, they portrayed the future to be. So I've been wearing it in the 38mm yellow gold PVD case with the roulette wheel. It's a heap of fun to play with. Essentially, there's this roulette wheel with a lovely light blue mother of pearl disc that sort of complements the gold in a really good way. But it's powered by a little pusher. You spin it around and click it to spin it around, and it's just fun. It's even borderline addictive to play with.
I agree. I love this. The wheel is cool, so you spin it and you can get future chance or more, maybe if you're lucky. I'm
Oh,
still not entirely sure what tenebrae means though, so maybe that's not the great result to get. Having said that, I think it's such a whimsical design, and I think it really is speaking to the whole grip collection. The Australian price of this one, the 38mm yellow gold PVD roulette, comes in at $3,190. You can buy all the grips at Gucci.com. Just plug in Gucci Grip into the search bar. They've got secure checkout and speedy shipping. Of course, if you want to do it in person, you can head to your closest Gucci boutique or authorized dealer and get your hands on the grip. Of course, we'll link everything up in the show notes. But Andy, we've got to get back to it.
Felix, we're back. We're back, and we've got a big task ahead of us.
Yeah,
A long task, you might say.
I mean, it's a long and winding road, but we're not doing it with petrol. We're doing it with podcasting. That's a terrible line.
You're just excited. You're
Mate,
excited for
I
this.
am. This is legitimately. I'm very, very excited about this, as you might be able to tell in the interview. But let's get Charlie on the line.
Felix, today's guest is an actor, writer, TV presenter. But you'll most likely know him as an adventuring biker who's ridden around the world, down the world, and is now riding back up with his good buddy Ewan McGregor and an electric Harley. On top of that, he's a UNICEF ambassador and one of Bremont's longest serving ambassadors. Welcome to the podcast, Charley Boorman.
Well, I'm not sure I can follow that. I have to live up to what you've just said. Yeah, no, it was funny actually. You know what caught my mind when you were saying that was my relationship with Bremont, and funny enough, and a bit like Harley Davidson. This time, when you and I first met Nick and Giles, we met at our workshop, and we were getting ready to do Long Way Down, and they came in. And they showed us these beautiful watches, and they said, "Look, we'd love you guys to have a go in them." And spend 3.5 months on the back of a motorbike, going over terrain, all that vibration and stuff. And it would be brilliant because you can test things in a laboratory, but being out on the open road, that's the big thing. So we said, and I just saw free watch, so I was in straight away. I'm easy like that. And they hadn't actually started selling watches.
Wow,
at that stage.
Long time ago then.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And then I think Long Way Round, I did the Dakar Rally in 2006. So it was 2007, I think, that we did Long Way Down. And off we went, and then we gave them back the watches, and they pretty much worked. There's not much really went wrong. I mean, they looked inside. There was a few little bits and pieces they changed and stuff like that, just because of the thing. And it was a lovely feeling because it was like you were part of their development in a very small way. You and I felt part of the development of Bremont. And then now, you cut to 12 or 13 years later. There we are, sitting, which was, I don't know if any of you have seen our TV show, but we started in the bottom of Argentina. With a great idea of going along on electric motorcycles and 2 electric support vehicles. And I remember just sitting in the bottom of Ushuaia in the bottom of Argentina, and it was the worst winter in 30 years. And there was a blizzard for the first 4 days, so we were delayed in that. And then I remember sitting there thinking, gosh, I don't think we've ridden these bikes more than an hour. and we'd never really charged them, so we had no idea. Anyway, so off we went because of what we did, on that 13,000 miles. There were bits and pieces that they changed. So it was nice to be sort of part of something again.
That sort of prototyping, yeah.
Completely in a different train there.
No, that's amazing. Well, we definitely have to talk about Bremont. We have to talk about the watch that's on your wrist really quickly before we get into, I love it, the new bronze broadsword. Really quickly before we get into the detail, because Felix is a massive fan of the show. For people who might not be aware of, who you are, I'd love to know, who is Charley Boorman? Where'd you grow up? How did you end up, turning riding motorcycles around the world into a job?
My father, it kind of, I suppose, my father is a film director, and he directed films like Point Blank and Excalibur and Hope and Glory, Deliverance,
mm-hmm.
And a whole bunch of other movies. And so, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, he was one of Britain's, I suppose, one of the world's foremost directors, I suppose.
Wow.
And there were 4 children, and I don't know if you remember Deliverance with Burt Reynolds and John Boyd.
Sure. How can we forget?
Julian Banjo. I was actually, that was the first movie I was ever in.
Oh wow!
But I wasn't the banjo player. Just so you know. Yeah. My father said to me, "Charlie, if you sit on that sofa with that bloke, I'll give you a tricycle." I know it sounds very dodgy, but I really wanted the tricycle. And I sat on the sofa, and it was John Boyd who. So at the end of the movie, if anyone ever wants to see it, at the very end of the movie, he comes home and there's a little boy sitting on a sofa, and that's me. And so my father, he made all these quite challenging movies all around the world. And as children, there were 4 of us. We all traveled with him because he would be somewhere for a year or so. So we lived in Ireland, in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of nowhere, in the Wicklow Mountains. And we'd be there for 2 or 3 years. And then Dad would get a movie, and we'd be gone for a year. And we'd live in the South Carolina, in the Pacific, in California, in wherever the movie took us. And then when there were child parts in the movie, he would say, no, don't hire any children. I've got 4 free children here. So we were just thrown into the movies, just as cheap cannon fodder. And that's kind of sort of where we came from. So I think I've got my adventurous spirit from my father and the sense of travel. And then I did a movie called The Emerald Forest, which was back in the 80s. Which did very well, and it was all about the Brazilian jungle and the deforestation, and based on a true story about a little boy who was stolen by Indians and these South American Indians. It's a lovely true story, and it was very much ahead of its time because of it was all talking about deforestation and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so then I started getting my own movies after that. But my acting career kind of went downhill a little bit because I kept choosing movies for their locations. So someone would say, "Hey Charlie, there's this movie going on in Africa," and so I go, "I'm there," and I'll be sitting on the plane reading the script, thinking, "Oh, well, this is rubbish, this script, but it's a nice location." And then I had like a 10-year period where as what lots of actors do, if you know an actor, the second most popular job for an actor is painting and decorating and doing people's houses up. So I started doing that, and I did that for about 10 years, and I went from just painting some bedrooms to building houses and stuff like that. And I thought my career was more or less over, really, and I'd had to start a different life. Somewhere in that 10 years, I made a movie with Ewan called The Serpent's Kiss. And it was with Pete Postlethwaite, Greta Scacchi, Richard E. Grant, and so on. And I thought, this is my comeback movie. And anyway, the movie came out and went straight to DVD. It was just a load of rubbish. Great fun to make, but terrible movie. I got this great friendship with Ewan. We stayed friends because of motorbikes, and we had children of the same age. We ran motorbike race teams together. We had some success in British superbikes. We did track days together. We did weekends, and we just slowly, came up with this stupid idea about going around the world.
So Long Way Round was 2004, and then you did Dakar a little bit after that, and Long Way Down was 2007. Bit of a gap between that and Long Way Up, which is now on Apple TV, currently airing halfway through the series. Why has it been such a sort of long moment between tours?
when we finished Long Way Down, Ewan headed over to California to live, and I was living in London. And then obviously he's this A-list actor, and started doing all these amazing movies, and I was doing a whole ton of other movies. Where I was doing Extreme Frontiers and By Any Means, and I think sort of 7 other different TV shows in this last period. And because he was over there and I was over here, we just started to sort of just drift along, and I think as great friends do, you life gets in the way sometimes, and then I had a huge crash in 2016. I had a massive crash in Portugal and smashed my legs to pieces. And that took about 2 years to sort of learn to walk again properly. And, I had a big cage around my leg. And if you watch the first episode of the new TV show, you see all of that. And then that was followed up in 2018 by an even bigger crash in South Africa, where I really smashed myself to pieces, and oh my gosh, that was big head injuries, and that was really bad. And so I was back in a wheelchair again, with broken pelvis and snapped forearms and all sorts of stuff. And then Ewan thought, Christ, all this has happened, and we haven't really been talking to each other. He was over here, and he reached out, and he came over to say hi, and from saying hi, he ended up staying a month, living in the house with Mary, and we just started talking again. And it's how best friends go. You just sort of pick up from where you left off, and you just carry on talking. And we just carried on talking rubbish and bikes.
What has that reunion meant for you? Obviously, coming at a time where you have had a couple of really serious and big injuries. What was it like, sort of reconnecting with your best mate?
Yeah, I mean, I think when that you have all these sort of life-threatening and body-changing experiences, and possibility of losing legs, and not ever walking right again properly, and realizing that there's tons of stuff you just can't do anymore. When Ewan came through the door, he and I was in a wheelchair. He didn't see any of that. He just saw our friendship, and so that was really soul building, because you when you have big injuries or a long recuperation, it can be very challenging, to your physical and mental well-being, and we talk about well-being a lot these days, and so it was refreshing, it was nice, and I think him and us reaching our hands out to each other and meant a lot and helped a lot, and when you have a big injury, I remember when I had the first big crash in 2016, and I was in Portugal, and I woke up and the next morning having had this brutal crash and big operation to get it all back together again. And I remember waking up, and I remember in the hospital bed, and I looked down and both my legs were in plaster, and I'd broken my right hand as well. And my hand was in plaster, and I'm just looking there thinking, God, I've got 3 limbs, and this is really bad, and I started to feel really panicked and really, thinking shit. And then you think, God, if I just left, the hotel 1 minute early or 1 minute later, this would never have happened, and that all starts to go in your mind. And then I noticed there was someone else in the room, and I looked over, and there was this guy and he was in so much worse state than I was. And I looked over and I looked back at myself, and I started laughing, and I'm thinking, well, actually, it's not so bad. and the Portuguese doctor had said, Jesus, Charlie, I'm just a glorified carpenter. I just put them back together, and the rest is up to you. And I suddenly thought, well, actually, you know what? It's not that bad. And I think that for me changed the switch. And then much later on, reconnecting with Ewan, and then we started talking about motorbikes, and then we started talking about Long Way Up, and something that the two of us had really wanted to do, and that's sort of where it came from.
You mentioned, I think a really good place to sort of talk about Long Way Up is just the quick, if anyone hasn't seen it, it's a journey from the bottom of South America up to LA, with the 2020 trick being that you're doing it as electric as possible. So electric bikes and electric support cars. And you were talking about how you started in Ushuaia, that terrible sort of blizzard, and it's certainly not how I think of Argentina when you're there. But you were saying you had never ridden, had any time on these bikes. The
Yeah.
thing that struck me with those early episodes was just how steep that learning curve was. Why did you throw yourself into that situation like that?
Well, I think just complete stupidity and naivety. And it just seemed like a good idea at the time. It was like, yeah, let's do electric. We were sitting here with Russ and Dave. We decided to do it. And Russ and Dave came to my house and with you, and we all sat down and had a barbecue and said, look, we want to do it again. We want to do something different. And Russ said, well, look, no one's really done it. Lots of people have done journeys on electric, over the last few years, but no one's ever really done that. And why don't we give it a go? And it wasn't sort of done as an eco thing. I'm a petrol head as much as anyone, but it just seems that that's the future. That's where a lot of us are going, and the right kind of challenge to do. And I mean, had we really known what was going to happen, I'm sure we would never fucking done it, But and then we started exploring about what motorbikes were out there that are electric, and in actual fact, what we realized was actually none of the big companies were really anywhere with electric. And there was only really the only real choice was bizarrely Harley Davidson. When you say to people, oh, what are you doing? We go, oh, we're just riding electric motorbikes up to Los Angeles, and people go, oh, wow, that's a challenge. And they go, what bikes are they? You go, well, they're Harley Davidsons, and then people just go, what Harley Davidsons? And that's just hilarious. And they've been developing this bike for about 6 years, and had put a lot of thought into it. And the bike is pretty much is a pretty impressive motorcycle, but it's a road bike.
Yeah.
And so when we met them, and it seemed clear that was the bike to use. And I love the fact that they have just gone from V-twins, and they've just marked a line in the sand and said, this is where we're going next, and just have smashed everybody else out of the park. And so, but we said to them, we had to go on them, and they said, well, look, we love it. We love the bike, but it's a road bike. Would you be able to help us develop it? And they said, yeah, no, I think we can do. What would you like done? We said, well, you'd like to beef it up, make it more an adventure bike, and, all that kind of stuff, and raise it off the ground, and handlebars and pannier, basically change the bike. And they just went, okay, all right. And anyway, so, a number of weeks later, we did a test, and they opened up the doors of this van, that the live wire came out, and then the long way up live wire came out, and it was this adventure bike with panniers, with handlebars, with a screen. They got the Pan American, which is their new petrol adventure bike, which is just about to come out. Taken the whole front end of that, slapped it on, changed the whole back seat, it was just incredible what they'd done. And they've done it. They got a whole team of people together, and all of them did it in their own time. So They all worked all day, and then they went out, and then they built this bike, totally changed it. On their own time, and made the most incredible bike. But the funniest thing about the whole thing is we finally got this bike down to the bottom of Argentina, and we're sitting there, and we realized, that we'd only ridden them for about an hour and a half in total, and we'd never really charged them. We went to a fast charger once where we sort of plugged them in, but there was lots of people there, and they ended up charging, and we went off for a coffee. So that was about as much charge. And then, then on top of that, you've got to realize that the whole of South America, Central America, and Mexico have no fast chargers. So we thought, well, okay, and then at the beginning, if you look at the show, when there's lots of drama about charging and realizing that batteries, don't really work in the cold. So,
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it might have been a very good TV decision, because it adds drama. Like, you've got this clock ticking sort of tool, sort of like 24, but as a travel documentary. What I think is really, really interesting. So with these bikes, like you've just said, how they're basically custom for you, essentially prototypes. It's the same situation with the Rivians you were using. I think they were the first production vehicles.
Well, the first two they ever built. Yeah. So they had problems of their own. And then we had to put a whole charging system in, which is what we wanted to do. So from the bottom of Argentina all the way up through Central America, there's charging points, phase 2 charging points the whole way. But then what we didn't realize was that Harley Davidsons, it was great for the Rivians and they could be charged, but the Harley Davidsons don't benefit from that.
They use a different
so,
thing. But,
so that was a whole different thing. So but then, you know, if you look at what we did with Rivian, I mean, you know, even just getting them down to the bottom of Argentina, you know, no one had ever flown electric vehicles around. So we couldn't just put them on a commercial flight. I mean, there was all sorts of just things that we had to sort of get through and all this kind of stuff. And Rivian were absolutely incredible about the whole thing. Just the same as Harley Davidson, they absolutely, all of them, both of them bent over backwards to make this help us make this possible. But one of the really interesting things about the whole thing was once you and I kind of got over the whole range anxiety syndrome to a degree and got our heads around it, which takes a little bit of time, you know. And it's the same when petrol cars first came out. You know, people had terrible range anxiety and said, you know, it'll never work and it's just the most ridiculous thing. You leave your house to go 20-25 miles down the road and you would think, well, I've got enough petrol to get there, but when I get there, will there be petrol? And you know, will I be able to get back? And will I get there? You could only buy petrol in a pharmacy at the time, you know, and then slowly, you know, petrol stations started to happen. And now, you know, there's a petrol station every corner. And the same thing is going to happen with electric. You know, it's the infrastructure isn't quite there yet. But in Europe and Britain, I mean, I can pretty much go from here to Edinburgh on the Harley, and there's fast charges pretty much the whole way. So it's sort of there. People are afraid of change. That's what I've kind of noticed, and we're afraid of the unknown, and to a little bit of the degree, the unknown is the electric.
So you say it's pretty much there, which is amazing. But I also understand that parts of your journey, you did kind of have to come up with really creative ways to charge. You know, I read people's front lawns. There was some fuses being blown. We were plunging people into darkness all over the place. You know,
and then the great thing, we were really worried that people would say no about plugging in, because, you know, they didn't know how much energy it would take.
Cost.
They didn't, the cost, the whole kind of thing. In actual fact, it's actually very cheap. I mean, over here in Britain, to charge the Harley Livewire to 80% or full is about £1.10. So, you know, $2.50 or something like that. So it's actually very cheap. But of course, we always paid our way, of course, because, you know, you of course we did. But you would go and you say to people, look, and the great thing about the trip was that you had to plug in because you needed the energy. So you're plugging into people's houses. But at the same time, you were plugging into people's lives and, you know, businesses and restaurants and you know, all sorts of stuff like that. And then you'd have to hang around for a while because it takes time. And that's what was something that we hadn't kind of foreseen. But that was brilliant, and it was a different kind of thing. It kind of took a little bit of our freedom away, because you couldn't just sort of go off into the thing and go camping in the middle of nowhere, because you always needed
mains.
You know, you always needed a charge that night, because it would take 10 or 11 hours to charge. So it was different, but it was amazing. I mean, I remember one time, on one of the episodes, we ended up going to this campsite because we tried to plug into this restaurant that was like a really pucker-looking restaurant, and thinking, "Oh, let's treat ourselves, and we'll go to this lovely restaurant and sit down for a couple of hours and have a nice meal." And there were loads of people in the restaurant, and every time we plugged in, the whole place would just go plunge into darkness. And they wouldn't say, "Oh, no, sorry, you can't do it." They would then plug us into somewhere else, and they were unplugging ovens to try and make it work. And so anyway, we couldn't do that. So we ended up in this campsite and plugged in and met this couple. And we sat and we had bought them lunch, and they were traveling from Europe. And it was this guy from, I think he was from Czech Republic or somewhere like that. And he'd gone to Turkey and had met this girl, this teacher. And they kind of sort of fell in love with each other. And he had to move on. He got to Istanbul and couldn't bear it anymore, and went back to pick her up. She comes from a very old-fashioned family, and she told her parents that she was going to Istanbul to teach in a school, and there we were talking to her in Chile, in South America, and we said, "Oh, have you told your parents that you're going?" She said, "No, they don't know." And when I just thought how brave she was, coming from such a formal family, and there she was, and everybody has the right to be able to go off and do what they want to do, and she was brave enough to be able to step out that door, and she fell in love with this lovely man, and they're off having this amazing adventure. I just hope that he hasn't seen the TV episode yet, because he'd be going, "Well, hang on a minute, what's that's not Istanbul."
I love that. So you didn't run out of juice ever along the way, but Ewan did. What was the trick to kind of maintaining that?
You know, just a little bit of the throttle. I think I think I'm just a better rider. No, I think, you know, the bikes. You know, every bike is its own being and have their own little thing. You know, every time, that's wonderful about riding a motorbike. You know, every time you get one, they have their own way of starting, or they have their own, you know, they have almost their own life, really. And I don't know. I think just, you know, we both start out in the day, and well, listen, don't tell him, because I haven't told him yet, but
I won't.
I would come out and I would just turn his bike on for a couple of hours in the middle of the night. But you know,
just
this will
unplug
go
it.
nowhere other than the three of us. Okay. No, I don't know what it was. I just think that it was an anomaly.
An anomaly. I think it's really great. I think that's what you were saying about, you know, sort of the range anxiety with petrol. I think is really, really a good way of looking at it. And I think it's super important seeing, you know, guys like you doing these ridiculous trips on electric vehicles and really pushing the boundaries with both the bikes and the cars. And doing that prototyping. And like, I assume you're providing something super valuable to, you know, I assume the team of scientists at Harley Davidson that have looked over the computer files of what these bikes have done.
No, for sure. I mean, I think it's lovely. Well, it's a little bit like with when Ewan and I first met Bremont. You know, we before they even started selling watches, they approached us when we were doing Long Way Down. They said, "Would you wear these watches and give it a go? Because you can test things in laboratories as much as you want, but the actual real physical open road is a totally different thing." So we wore these watches all the way down through Africa and stuff, and really gave them a good pounding, and then we gave them back, and I mean, they worked perfectly. They never really stopped working, but they said little bits and pieces inside they changed because of that. So in a small way, we felt sort of part of that, of their journey and part of the development in a tiny way. And I think with Harley Davidson and with Rivian, you know, we felt very, very similar, and that we were part of and partly the way these bikes, when you plug them in and charge now, is directly because of problems that we found along the way. And you know, don't get me wrong, there's not really much really went wrong with them, to be honest. But you know, it was like little things that you just will never come across unless you're riding them every day for 100 days, you know, through 13,000 miles in 13 countries, you know. But the funny thing, the thing that used to always make me laugh is we would go to these border crossings in the middle of nowhere, and you explain to them, you know, these electric bikes. And there was one guy, he was writing the form down. He goes, "Okay, what's your frame number now, or chassis number?" And I said, "Chassis number is this." And he goes, "What's your engine number?" I said, "Hasn't got one." And he goes, "No, what's your engine number?" And I go, "Doesn't have one." And then he started roaring with laughter, because he would then remember that it was electric, and then he go, "Oh, of course." He said, "This is the first time I've done an electric vehicle." And then he just thought it was the funniest thing. He said, "I've spent years here just going engine number, chassis number, and now he said there's no chassis number, engine number." So
it's the future.
So there were lovely little moments, and there were the future, you know, and the future is interesting. It's super interesting about how we you know, how we approach electric, you know, and our driving habits will change, you know. And so when we go to when we go on the highway and we pull into a service station in the middle of wherever it is to plug in your car or your motorbike for 35, 40 minutes to get a full charge. Instead of going into the service station, maybe you're going to a little workspace where you can sit down and you can get some Wi-Fi and you can do a little bit of work. You can have a couple of conference calls while you're waiting for your bike to charge. You can go and you can get your laundry, or you can get your supermarket, or whatever it is. So that there's a huge scope of massive possibility now about how we charge and how we use that time, and that's the next big land grab. If you're going to invest in some money, invest in this new idea of how we pull up and plug in.
Fascinating. Andy, could we just take a break? I need a refill.
What are you drinking, Felix?
It's your classic filter roast from our new coffee sponsor, Inglewood Coffee Roasters.
Beverage sponsor, Felix, we have made it.
I've got a cheeky Yirgacheffe filter on the go at the moment. Ethiopian bean with some light floral notes. It's my daily, and I can't get enough.
Well, Felix, I'm actually punching out another double espresso using their Colombian Spirit of Peace espresso roast blend. It's sweet and biscuity.
So here's the deal. Use OT30, that's OT30, for 30% off your order at checkout. On top of that, Inglewood Coffee Roasters offer free shipping on all Victorian orders and Australia-wide when you spend more than $50.
Head to inglewoodcoffeeroasters.com.au to place an order today. We'll link that up. OT the podcast, fueled by Inglewood Coffee Roasters.
Let's get back to it. So at the time of, here in Australia, I assume it's a global release, long way up, you're about to get across the Darien Gap, which, as I understand it, is one of the more hairy parts of the world in 2020.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, like you sort of said, there's a lot of those sort of high tension moments where you almost come off the bike or you're about to miss a ferry. What are some sort of times during the filming, or maybe that didn't make it on camera, where you're like, I really shouldn't have done this? Like, why am I here?
Every day. Every day, what the fuck am I doing here is what we came up with a lot. But it's like when you do these trips, you decide on a length of time, and that length of time is the life of that particular adventure, and at some stages you're up against it with the clock into that situation because of whatever happens. We get some people who say to us, "Oh, well, you guys always, it seems to be rushing at times, and surely you could give it more time." Another motorcyclist coming the other way, and he knew we were on this trip, so he was looking out for us. And I think we met him in Central America, and he stopped and he saw us, and he whizzed around and he chased back after us and he pulled over, and we were chatting about him. We're saying, "Oh, we're trying to get to this place for this time," and he goes, I totally understand about time. And I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" He goes, "Well, I've given myself a year and a half to go from I think he was from Canada, to go down to Argentina." And he said, and this, he was just in Central America, because he hadn't gotten very far. And he said, "Yeah, no, I'm in a bit of a panic to get down into South America because I've already spent 9 months just getting this far." So matters, how long you have. There's always a period of time where things have gone wrong and that's just that's the nature of the beast. If we could, as Ewan said, I think at one stage, and that's the thing about these big trips is that in order for them to stop, you have to start thinking about doing another one. You want to stop because the journey is coming to an end, and you want to go home and you want to see all your family and friends and stuff. But there's a huge part of you that just doesn't want to stop. And if someone said, "Oh, look, let's turn around and we'll go back again," they go, "Okay, let's do it." But in order to make it easier, you start thinking about another adventure and saying, "Oh, well, look, we can stop this one because we're going to do that one." So that's sort of how it works.
What the sort of maybe the number one magical moment of the whole trip was for you personally?
think I think both you and I were very proud, or felt very good that we managed to that we'd managed to be able to do this whole thing electric, with the idea that there was no fast charging. It was quite a tough thing. So that part of it we felt really good about. But there were always just sort of moments, and it's usually the moments that you remember are the ones that were the most difficult. Trying to get the plane or boat, when we jungle and seeing cool earth, amazing things with indigenous people in the jungle. Those things, just being lucky enough to be able to see that was amazing. One of the things that I really loved was when we were in Costa Rica. No, but so 90% of Costa Ricans' energy is renewable, and they don't have a military, so all the money that they spend in education and infrastructure, spending it on a military. And the first light bulb that was ever turned on with renewable energy place, and it's pretty freaking awesomely beautiful place.
Great coffee too.
Coffee. There's quite a few solar farms as you went along. We stopped at this one because of what Costa Rica stands for. And I don't know how a solar farm works. I mean, of course, I get it that the sun hits the panels and there's electricity. We came in and said, "Look, would you mind showing us around?" And he said, "Because we got some electric bikes." And he went, "Yeah, oh yes." He said, "Come in." He said, "Plug in. You can plug in straight to the sun." He said, and it was like, "Oh yeah, right, okay." So we came in, we plugged in, and then he took us around the solar farm and showed us how it all worked and all this kind of stuff. And all while we were doing that, we were getting sun energy straight from the sun into the bike, and that was one of the coolest things. And not only did they do that, but they had this giant solar farm with these huge fields full of solar farms. But they had sheep running around as well. So the sheep in as a secondary crop, if you see what I mean.
Uh-huh.
And it keeps all the grass down, so they don't have to mow all around the solar fields. So it's just like, wow, And then we went off with the batteries half full of the sun. We plugged into Costa Rica in the evening. We were getting renewable energy, So it was like totally carbon free.
It sounds like we should all move to Costa Rica. I think that's what you're saying.
Oh yeah. Oh, those beaches. Oh my gosh. It's just,
wow. I mean, all of it.
North beaches and
no military coffee beaches. What's not to?
I know.
Please don't tell me there's something horrible.
If we all just dumped? It would be great if we all just dumped the military and. Well, actually, no, that's not true. Well, anyway, whatever.
So you've I think maybe more than the vast majority of the population, you've seen more planet, much of it remote. Why do you keep doing it? Like, what brings you back to it? That sort of, going out to Mongolia or Kyrgyzstan or the high plateau of the Andes.
The money.
Okay, sure. Good answer.
No.
Looking for oil.
No. I mean, I think it's I think it goes back to my father, really, who installed. We always travelled, and he always made very difficult, adventurous movies, and so I think he instilled that whole thing of that desire to look around the world and see what's out there. I think we're all in Europe and North America and Australia, where we're all. It's very easy, very quick to sort of look down on other countries that don't live the way that we do, and kind of have an opinion on it when actually people and countries live their lives because they have different beliefs, different thoughts, different ways of living, and it's not wrong or right, it's just different, and we should respect that rather than have opinions of it, and to a degree, obviously, but and it's only when you really start to travel around and have a look around all these different countries that you realize that what a lot of people say is just not true, and my feeling and is that 90% of the people that I've met are good and are nice people, and of course there's certain parts of the world where you can't get to and shouldn't go because of whatever, but in all the places I've been, you know, it's the people are good. The people, you know, all the people want is their kids to go to school, have a decent job, do a little bit better than their parents did. You know, and the generosity of people, it just always blows my mind, and how generous people are, and how much people actually want to find out where you're coming from, what you're doing, how can we help, come and get some food. It's amazing, and I'm sure people always say that travel is the spice of life, and I really think it is. I think we all should get out there and have a little look around for ourselves.
That's great advice. So Ewan McGregor is obviously a very recognizable face. Were there times in the journey, the trip, that sort of was pretty handy traveling with Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Yeah, sure. There was sometimes, you know, and I think when you get into the big cities, it can be quite challenging at times. And you know, he is Obi-Wan Kenobi, so you know, people do, you know, they are quite popular movies. And when you're down in the middle of nowhere in a city where not a lot of people travel to, you know, people get very excited, and that's lovely. It's lovely to see that impact, that you know, that he has, and it's lovely just to see. I think once you get out into the outside of the cities and stuff, in most of the places we went to, people, you know, are far too busy just getting on with their lives, really, most of the time. So you know, and some people kind of know, like we did a thing with UNICEF. You and I are both goodwill ambassadors and have been for a long time, and we were doing this one in Bolivia, up in the mountains, and there was this school which was teaching the indigenous language as well as Spanish to keep the culture alive. They were asking us, you know, what we did, and you said, I'm an actor, and they said, oh, okay, and they said, you know, and they said, what have you done? And he rattled off these movies, and I think the first one he said was Trainspotting, but you know, clearly they were young and probably hadn't seen that. But he rattled these things up, and they said, oh, well, maybe you'll know him from Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you know, none of them knew. They were sort of going and being very polite about it, and then I came in and sat down and broke the chair, made them all laugh, but on the whole, you know, one of the great things about riding a motorbike is that you have an element of anonymity, and that people don't know you. You put your helmet on and off you go. And there's a great therapy to riding motorbikes. It's very good for, you know, we talk about mindfulness and well-being and all this kind of stuff. And you know, like in COVID lockdown, you know, to get on your motorbike and go for a ride, you know, it's safe. You know, it's you put your helmet on, you go off. You can even ride with a couple of people because you're all social distancing. You get out there. It's great for the soul. It's great for the mind. You put your helmet on. There's no distractions like you would have in a car or something like that. And off you go. And you come back and you've almost had like a little kind of mini mind reset. You know, and you know, I speak to lots of people who commute on their motorbike. You know, and they come back from work. And by the time they park up and walk into the house, they're ready to be home. If you're driving home and you're still talking on the phone and you're talking business, and you're walking into the house and you're still talking on the phone, you open the door, your kids come in and they go, hey, hi, and you're going, shh, I'm on the phone. When you should have left that in the car or at work. And whereas the motorbike, you have that ability. So I think it's really important that that you have that. And the motorbike, for me, through my injuries from 2016, 4 years of being in and out of wheelchairs and stuff, the mental and the physical thing was always about, you know, getting back on a motorbike, and what can you do to do that. And that was my mental fitness, and my physical fitness was all about that.
Cool. Well, the series, as you mentioned a bit earlier, it opens up with some pretty gritty footage of your injury in 2016. And there's some moments in the show where it looks like the strain has you a little bit rattled, you know, especially being on the bikes for so long. Curious, like, how did you decide to get back on the saddle after, you know, 2 really big knocks in a short period of time?
I suppose I suppose that once I had the crash, I think I grew up riding motocross bikes and stuff, and so I've always been falling off bikes and stuff. The minute you ride off road, that's just part of it. A bit like horse riding. If you take horse riding a bit more seriously, most people that we know who ride horses have broken bones or an arm or a leg or something like that. And I think it you know, it's like with a car, you kind of have to take your driving license really to drive, whereas you choose to take a motorcycle license. And so, you know, I think there's a big difference there. And getting on the back of the motorbike, that freedom, that joy that it brings is far outweighs any kind of injury. And so for me, yeah, it was always about you know, I remember lying in bed here. I couldn't go upstairs. I had to lie in the dining room, take the table out and made a bedroom downstairs. And I would lie there at night and I could see a couple of my motorbikes out the front of the house. And it was always about, you know, right now, how long is it going to be before I can get on there? I mean, I was riding my wife's scooter. I had this big cage around my leg holding it together. And I realized that, you know, I couldn't ride my motorbike because the cage, I couldn't get my foot close enough to the gear change because the cage was in the way. But I could ride. I worked out that I could ride my wife's scooter because there was no gears. so I could walk out on my crutches, and I used to go. I own part of a restaurant up in Shoreditch in London called the Bike Shed, and what I figured out is I could get the moped off the stand, and I could sit on it, and I could put my crutches in between my arms, and I'd ride up to the Bike Shed in Shoreditch, and then but I didn't have the strength to put the scooter back on the center stand. So I'd get one of the guys working in the restaurant to come and take my bike or hold my bike while I got off it, and I would go and crutches in, and they'd put the bike on the center stand, and I'd carry my day. So that was, and I think for me that was my therapy. That was how I channeled all my fear and my worry and my thought, God, am I ever going to walk again properly? Am I ever going to do any of this kind of stuff again? You know, and I channeled in that to be able to try and ride a motorbike. And you know, when I finally got on to a motorbike for the first time, a proper motorbike, you know, the joy and the happiness that I felt was just extraordinary, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing.
You hear that drill.
Maybe coffee or something.
No, don't worry about it. I think we've got to talk about Bremont in a second, but I've got one last sort of, it's not really a question, it's more of a sort of an observation. One of the things I like most about all of the Long Way series, but I think especially this one, is there's a risk, I think, with you and Ewan being two sort of blokey blokes in a crew of mostly blokey blokes. It could be a real sort of sausage fest. But, you know, it's but what I find amazing about
what a horrible thought.
Coming. I'm sorry.
But what's really striking is how caring you are for each other, and how it comes across on camera that you're really sort of caring and affectionate, and even almost you know, intimate in a way that someone's, you know, you spend a long time with someone in very close quarters, like not just yourself and you, and clearly are good friends, but there's a bit where one of the camera guys, I think, has altitude sickness, and everyone's really concerned for his well-being. It's a really, I think, positive representation of how to be a good role model as a guy, and to be emotionally supportive, and how to talk to other men. What do you put that down to, and how do you think you can make more people sort of, you know, foster that sort of environment, or, you know, way of having a relationship with other guys?
I don't know. I think Ewan and myself and funny enough, Russ and Dave, you know, who are two business partners and producers who helped us make all this happen. When Ewan and I first came up with the idea back in the day, but I think I come from a very open family, you know, where we all show our emotions, and we're all quite touchy-feely, cuddly people, and I suppose that sort of comes through, and I think I think it's a good thing I do a lot of work with Movember. I had testicular cancer a little while ago, and they talk about the whole idea of, if you have a mate and stuff like that, and you ask them, hey, how are you, mate? And you go, fine. But and then if you say, actually, no, really, how are you? And it only takes 2 minutes to really understand. And I don't know. I think it just comes. I suppose it just comes naturally. I suppose, I don't know. Never really sort of thought about it.
I think it's really good.
It's nice to. I mean, I think when you travel, I think it becomes, when you do these big journeys. You and I always joke that it becomes like a little mini marriage for 3 months. Because you're living in each other's pockets. And
a bromance.
You have your ups and downs, and you have your good days and your bad days. And you after all these years, I mean, there aren't many. I suppose we're lucky because one of the things they say over the years, is that if you do travel with a mate, it's not guaranteed that you'll get on, even though you're great mates. But once you're on the journey, it's not guaranteed that you'll get on the journey. And some people have, split and stuff. But for you and I don't know, maybe it's because we were old mates before, and we worked on movies together and spent a bit of time together, that kind of work. But we kind of tend to know how each other are feeling, know when to leave each other alone, know when to make a joke or whatever. And we both have the same goal. And if something really bothers us, we're about the other person, we'll say it. Because someone once said, it's not that person being annoying, it's you allowing yourself to be annoyed by that person. Does that make sense?
I love that. I love that.
And that, to a degree, that's true. They don't know that they've been annoying. They're just being them, And so, if there is something that's going on, then just talk about it. And. But Ewan's a lovely, he's a lovely, generous person. I think that my world, when we did Long Way Round, I was starting to struggle a little bit in life with work and all that kind of stuff. And Ewan and I had this idea a very long time ago about doing this adventure, and it came at a time that really worked for me, and because of him and his generosity and who he was and his kindness, it changed my world forever. Long Way Round changed my world, and I have a huge amount to thank Ewan's kindness and generosity for that.
Tremendous. And what a bromance. We'll link up. And on the bromance note, well, it's mutual. It's a mutual, bromance is mutual. Yeah. And speaking of bromances, there's the brothers, and we need to talk about Bremont, Nick and Giles. Oh, yes. Obviously very good friends of yours, the founders of Bremont, who we love, and Felix and I are both wearing MB2s as well. So the whole gang's wearing it. You mentioned that you were very early on you were in the R&D team for Bremont before they were selling watches, but you recently on Instagram posted a pic of the brand new broadsword, which as of right now is like 2 days old. So we haven't had the chance to see it. Tell us what it's like.
The broadsword. I mean, it's a beautiful bike. I was about to say it's a beautiful bike. It's a beautiful watch. I love the fact that it's well. It made me laugh because when I said, he said, "Look, I've got this new watch. When you think of it, you can see it here. It's very pretty. It's brass and as the longer you wear it, it changes color all the time. And like if you go in the sea, it changes color. But then because it's such beautiful brass, it cleans itself and so always when you look at it, it changes. But anyway, but the funniest thing was that I said, "What's the name of the watch?" And he said, "It's Broadsword." And I started laughing. Why are you laughing? I said, "Well, because Ewan and I spent our whole time laughing because we would say, we had that great old movie. This is, Broadsword calling Danny Boy, Broadsword calling Danny Boy." And we used to joke about it all the time. So if we were talking to someone, suddenly on their headphone, this Ewan would come on going, "Broadsword calling Danny Boy." And anyway, it made me laugh. And that was the name of the watch. But I think it's quite elegant. I really enjoy it. I love all the work and all the watches that the Bremont boys make. So this is a very nice addition.
Love that.
So what was the what did you obviously you weren't wearing that one when you were going across up America rather. What was what was on your wrist then? Was the
I was wearing this
2000? Oh, the other one.
No.
That's the
I've just changed the. I know I've got a
S2000.
watch in his hand. Because I knew you would ask that question, so I threw it on this hand here.
How did you know? What gave it away?
Oh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks or
Was
something
it
like that. Anyway.
was it as reliable as the Harley?
Oh yeah, no. Listen, I've been smashing and trying to destroy Bremonts for years. I took them on the way down. I did the Dakar Rally in 2006. I smashed. I even broke my hands on the Dakar Rally, and the watch still didn't break. And then I took it on By Any Means, Extreme Frontiers. They've gone all around the world. Me and I've had numerous crashes and climbing and you name it. And the little puppy just keeps ticking.
Amazing. Yes. Well, we can all testify to that. In a broader sense, have you always been interested in watches? Is it another mechanical thing like cars and bikes?
Yes, exactly that. I mean, I've always been interested in especially watches that don't have a battery, that self wind, that and that you can wear a watch that does all of that and has done for such a long time. And it's pretty unbelievably accurate, and the the engineering that it takes just, and then you sit on it for 3 months doing that, and it still carries on, and you just think, how on earth did they do that, and that's what's sort of fascinating. That's what fascinates me about watches, and then because Bremont are a British company, they and if you think about watchmaking world was British pretty much, Rolex and all sorts of other watch manufacturers were all British originally, and then all ended up being smuggled over to Switzerland, and they stole the British watch industry. But so just a broad sweeping statement.
Yeah.
Just firing shots.
I love it.
Just firing shots out there. Yeah, those pesky Swiss.
We'll get the lawsuits in the mail.
Get the lawsuits going on, exactly. But they and then the idea of a young company breaking into a very established market, and then making everybody else really worried because they've hit the ground running, and they build beautiful watches and watches that people want to and they've got London written on the bottom of them, which says they're built here, and a big piece of metal comes into the factory and it slowly gets eaten up, and then suddenly something like these come out of the other end like that, and they go off. And I think that's wonderful. And they've built it, and they just finished building a huge factory here in Henley upon Thames, and and they're just two nice guys to hang out with as well. I mean, they're fun, and they've got the most wonderful background, all about flying and their father, and tragic. And out of tragedy came this wonderful brand, So, I mean, hats off to them.
Yeah,
I couldn't do it.
They really are. They're amazing, and they do such good work. I think with they're very active in sort of supporting veterans, and they work with military units, all that sort of stuff. And Invictus, they're really a great company that conveniently makes lovely watches. So I'm with you there. Aside from obviously we're all watching your latest show on Apple TV. Was there anything else you've been that's been occupying your time recently that you've been enjoying or consuming?
I think we've all had to find things to do during lockdown and stuff like that, and I've started. I love cooking. Cooking's a huge part of my life, and I did MasterChef. I did Celebrity MasterChef once.
Nice.
And got to the final of that, and that pesky I got picked at the post. Anyway, so, but we won't go into that because I don't like to talk about failure. But so during lockdown, I started doing these little videos about cooking and making stuff. So I've been doing a bit of that. There's a couple of TV shows that I'm hoping to get made. I do these motorcycle tours every year. I do one in Australia every year. So I'm hoping that we can get that done this in 21. I'm still hoping we can do that. And then I do a couple of motorcycle tours in Africa, and so take people through that. So that noise, I'm so sorry about that. It's the builders next door.
I'm used to the sound of Felix, so this is peace for me.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, so there's lots coming up. So I'm super excited.
That's amazing. That's amazing, and it's great to see that you're still planning for the fun year ahead. Well, Charlie, we really appreciate you joining us, and we apologise for running a little bit over, but we're just having too much fun. So what we will say is, if you are in London, head to the Bike Shed in Shoreditch, get a feed. Obviously, check out The Long Way Up, Apple TV, and of course, you're all over Instagram and social media. Charley Boorman, look him up. Charlie, thank you so much. It's been a real treat.
Pleasure.
Can't say anything else. Thank you.
Yep. I'll turn my video on now again.
Thank you, guys. And well, listen, thank you very much for your time, guys. I really appreciate it, and listening to my rubbish. So,
no, it's great.
Anyway, until the next time, see you in Australia or over here.
Yeah.
And enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
See you, mate.
What a guy. What a fucking champion.
You've got to watch it,
that man.
You've got to watch. Oh, you've got your birthday coming up. I'm getting you
I
a
do.
bloody Apple TV subscription.
Oh, I like that. What a really down to earth, lovely guy.
Yeah.
Super generous to give us so much time.
Yeah.
Just like, who is like that? It's inspirational to meet people like that, and to have gone through so much, injury, and to be so sort of positive and have such a nice outlook on life after,
Do you know what
such
else?
a bumpy ride.
Literally a bumpy ride. Do you know what else I find really cool?
What, his leather jacket that he was wearing?
No, the fact that he is a watch brand ambassador, Bremont ambassador, obviously, that did like legitimate work prototyping it, and like
He did.
yeah. Like everyone's like,
Really
we don't
authentic.
just want you wearing this on a red carpet. It's like, I'm going to, go on a motorbike around the world. I'm probably going to mess your watch up. Let me give it a go. I think that's great. Thank you very much to Charley Boorman. Oh, you're going to ask a question?
You know that theory we had about where Bremont get their ambassadors?
Oh, we should have asked him.
Was he involved? Probably an extra.
Well, maybe his dad.
Behind the
Maybe his
scenes.
dad sort of, was a script advisor or something.
We'll link it up. Alrighty, guys, support us by supporting our sponsors.
Yes.
We'll link up everything to do with the Gucci grip.
Yep.
Obviously, Inglewood Coffee, OT30 to get that sweet discount. OT30.
I see you've been stocking up, Andy Green.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Just got to return the money back to them. Email us, otthepodcast@gmail.com. Felix, what's our Insta?
OT.podcast.
Let's get out of here.
Let's do it.